Hello and welcome back to the Reflection Pool for another moment of reflection on the who and the what and the why of who we are. Once again, I think it's very appropriate to be background here by the moving currents of life, because indeed that's how life does come into our life, and that's how we add more life to it. We were talking last week on this special something that supports all life that there is in the very breath of our own beingness. And that something has flown into this existence experience in the metaphorical river of life, represented again by the stream. Whenever we are joined and immersed in life's river, therefore living and expressing life's qualities of love and compassion and caring, we are very complete. There's a sense of warmness about us. There's a gentleness to our day. And in fact, we are holding out a light to the world. You might note that this is not just a light of illumination, but it is also a light of reflection. So that hopefully in the way we live our life, we remind others that, hey, that's pretty nice. Let's do that also. And again, this is a life that is very much connected to our flow of life in general. So here we have to reflect upon our beginning once again. And I'd like to remind people that even before our bodies and minds took up residence in this world of existence, we were. You've heard me say it before. Life found us in the rocks, turned the key, and freed the locks. And when that wonderful impulse of creation entered this larger world, and we were manifested and animated, the life that came into us was indeed that power of pre-existing life. And yes, that's the rub. We are more than this physical existing being, because before our life could be, pre-existing life found us. And the beautiful part of that is, and it touches on one of the central themes of the message of more, is that beyond this life, there is more life. And it's that we want to really understand and preserve. So as we make our way through this time and place, existence places limitations and ultimately death on our mind and body, but it does not close out the living experience. If we live in life, we have chosen more life, and we will make our way into the next room in the house of life. It is so important, friends, that we do not allow our flow to dry up as the spring behind us is now leaking low. In many respects, this illustrates some of the conditions that surround our world today. And this precious something, this mysterio, this thing that supports and sustains us, is indeed at a very low flow. Many of us have a foot in the world of more, but also occupy a place in the world of less. Such it is where light and darkness is entwined here in this place and time. So the important thing is, I think, to understand when in fact we are drawing this precious fluid from life's river and not putting it back. We might say, for instance, that there is a slight hole in our drinking cup. So here you can see this precious sustenance, this thing that we cannot see, much like we referred to on the last occasion as being much like oxygen. We cannot see it. But if it leaves us, we know dramatically something is wrong. So in time, we might not realize that we have compromised with life. And ultimately, life is about non-compromise, but staying totally enmeshed and immersed in that river. When the leak is slow, we may not know it. And our slide into darkness or our movement away from life's river may not be so apparent. But ultimately, that cup, that from which we quench our thirst, is leaking more mightily. And at this point, it becomes necessary that we understand not only are we wasting this precious moment of life, but we're not putting anything back into life's river. And therefore, the vigor that supports this world comes at a low flow. And ultimately, friends, and most importantly, it takes a certain quantity of this precious Masterdo or substance to support us not only during our walk through this world, but in movement towards that next world, making that pass to the next room in our house of life. Because a bucket, per comparison to the cup, represents the body of our combined and collective earthly experiences. And if we have a leaking cup, then we really have a leaking bucket ultimately. And this will not help us move beyond this place and time. It is true, once again, that this precious something that underlies life, this vigor, this spirit that flows from life's river and carries us through these days which emerge from the eternal sea, that pre-existing life to what we spoke. It's not always apparent when there's a leak in our cup. So how can we know when our thirst is not being quenched, at least not by the sacred waters of life? Well, we come to this place in time in our lives where we sense a loss of satisfaction and joy. Life loses its shine. And that is a serious connection and a communication to us. We need to sense that. Farther on, we will find that instead of trusting our gut and our intuition in that place of the heart, we go almost exclusively in the mind to try to figure out our path and justify our existence. This is a lonely place to be, because in place of context, we substituted ideas. And it doesn't get the full picture. So many of you know the consequence of steering yourself through your cognition only. But we must be remembered that the holistic being of our presence has much to do with the ripples that surround us, as well as the body and mind within that nucleus. Those ripples speak to us through the ancient intelligence of our instinctual gut intuitive center. And we need to go there. So as we move farther and farther from life's river, sleep becomes ever more difficult to attain. There are further consequences as we go along, and one of them will come to either be a state of depression or a serious addiction, which I know well, which can have huge consequences in our way of life. Many people have asked, is there steps and is there a program to free ourselves from the leaking cup? And there is only one, and it's a one step. But once facing in the right direction, be steadfast, don't hurry, but keep on walking. Let me take you to the Netherlands for one last illustration. We looked into the day and we looked into the night. Finally, a guide appeared and we asked them, please tell us, what is the difference between heaven and hell? And at that point, the guide says to us, well, you know, they're not really so different except for one or two small things. And what's unique about both heaven and hell is that they both have these ridiculously long 7-foot forks. So here, I shall open the door. You cannot enter now, but you may look. And we looked in, and we chose to look into hell first. And as the door opened, the anguish and the sorrow and the horror met us. But there upon a long banquet table, food was piled aplenty, and yet the people sitting around the table were emaciated. They were all trying to use this ridiculously long fork to feed themselves, and rather than feeding themselves, they were puncturing one another and slowly starving. And then we moved on to the door of heaven, and there we also looked. As we gazed in, we noted merriment and celebration, but it looked much the same. There was food upon the table, but people did not starve, they celebrated. Joy was everywhere. There was one significant difference. In heaven, they were reaching across the table with this ridiculously long fork and feeding one another. And in doing that, they were sharing their gifts in the expression of life. So friends, put more on life's table and more will be received. Thank you so much. And don't forget that what you have is worthy, and put it into life's waters.